From the misty Pacific coast to the rugged Cascade Mountains and beyond to the high desert in the east. Whether you chase black-tailed or mule deer, Roosevelts or Rockies, if you fish for bass or salmon, hunt cougars, bears, turkeys, or ducks, we want to talk about the most overlooked section of the outdoorsman community, true Pacific Northwest hunters and fishermen. You have found the podcast for you. Born in the wettest woods of the lower 48, where we only talk about the endless pursuits of the far western world to inspire you in your next adventure.
There will be many tags in our lives that go unfilled, but if your first objective is to learn and grow, you can find success in every season.
And I stand up and like, oh my God,
Your foot fell off.
it's off. Can't find it.
And ask the big questions about what truly motivates our life in the wild.
I believe that God gave us the ability to do this.
You go from plodding along and not really living to living the full, abundant life that He has for you now.
You are listening to the Oregon First Hunting and Fishing Podcast.
Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We are coming at you today from the Endicott Farms, and it's an honor to be down here interviewing Nathan Endicott. Nathan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you bet.
I'm just so thankful that you gave your time and everything to be a part of what we're doing, and we're excited to pick your brain a little bit on a few concepts in the outdoor space. I'm your host, Bryant.
And I'm Eric.
And our whole goal with this podcast is to connect with and actively engage with Western Oregon outdoorsmen. So if you like to hunt, fish here in Western Oregon, you're going to want to listen up. Our guest today, Nathan Endicott, as we've introduced, he is a very accomplished archery blacktail hunter. He also hunts other things, which today we're going to be less talking about blacktail, which is really hard for me because I absolutely love blacktail hunting, but we're going to kind of focus on spring bear hunting because it's the time of the season. We're going to share some local hunting and fishing news, some cool things going on in our area, and then also give some tips. But we're going to try to have a meaningful conversation about what's behind the beast. Why do we hunt? What inspires us? What do we get out of it beyond just meat and antlers? Because there's a lot more to why we hunt.
We don't have any announcements this week. Be looking for them within the next podcast.
We're hoping that we'll be able to plan some sort of an outing. We're thinking maybe trap shooting, maybe another fishing trip. We don't know yet, but keep your eye on that and join us. We had a great fishing trip last time, which we're going to talk about soon. One thing that we try to do every episode is keep Eric and I accountable to our journey in the outdoors, right? Because we don't want to just have this podcast and then never actually do this stuff ourselves. So I'm going to talk about what I did in the last week, and Eric's going to talk about what he did. So as we said, it's spring bear. I've been looking, and in just the last 7 days is when I've started getting into some bear sign. I'm thinking that maybe they were still a little bit lethargic, not really moving around as much as I expected, but now I'm starting to find bear signs, so I'm getting a little bit more excited. I have probably 4 or 5 days that I'll be able to hunt over the next couple weeks till the end of the season, because I'm balancing hunting and also pursuing a master's degree at the same time.
Wow.
And work and having another baby.
Yeah.
You gotta make sure you say all that stuff too, because you are busy.
Yeah, that's right. I just want to apologize at this point if the audio is a little weird, a little not as professional sounding as normal, is that I made a big fail and I forgot to bring the right cable for the third mic. So I just have to say it now because I won't be able to hide it. Eric and I are sharing a mic. It's kind of weird, but just deal with it.
And I have my hand on his lap.
No, you don't. No, please, no.
We'll edit that part out.
No, I'm going to leave it in to show everyone how creepy you are and what I have to deal with. But the thing I'm real excited to share is that I got my first turkey, and that was fun. I've always bought the sports, not always, I bought the sports pack a number of times, so you have a turkey tag in your pocket. I just never actively pursued turkeys. So I was actually bear hunting in the beginning of the season, and before turkey season started, I found a turkey, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to try turkey hunting, and got real excited, watched all kinds of videos and listened to some podcasts, and then the first day I go up, it's snowing in the spot I found the turkey, and I was I don't know, that apparently turkeys don't like the snow because I didn't hear a single gobble or anything the whole day. You know, I ended up walking 10 miles looking for turkey tracks in the snow to no avail. They were probably in the reprod now that I think about it, but
Or roosting, yeah.
Yep. All that to say is first ever turkey hunt, kind of a bust, but then I went back out, my second ever turkey hunt, you know, and it was hot. It was in the 80s, and I hunted hard all day. Finally, it's about 2:30 p.m. It's heat of the day. I'm thinking I'm done, and all of a sudden, and I just knew, you know, and made it happen.
Wow.
So pretty fun.
Second ever attempt. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of myself.
So you were packing shotgun?
Yep,
What
shotgun.
gauge?
12 gauge.
12 gauge.
Yep. I had my turkey choke, number 4, Super X turkey loads, and
Right on. How far is your shot?
30 yards.
30 yards.
Yep. And none in the breast. So I was pretty happy about that.
Was it like ambush style? They were gobbling away and you just kind of eased in, or?
No, I was already
Cut 'em
sitting.
off? Okay.
And I'm actually planning on doing a full episode about this turkey hunt, but I'll give a teaser.
Yeah.
I got to the point, I had been moving from spot to spot. I'd sit somewhere for about 30 minutes to an hour, and, you know, every 20 minutes.
Oh,
I
sure.
would,
You're calling.
yeah. But then by the time, you know, I started that at 6 in the morning. By the time 2:30 hit and I'm just sweating and hot, and I don't hear anything, I started messing with my call. I wasn't really intentionally practicing, but I figured out, oh, it's a box call. Oh, I can make it purr. Look at that, I'm purring. And then that's when the first gobble hit about 100 yards
They
away.
like that purr for sure.
Yeah, and there's no way it sounded like a turkey. I don't know what these turkeys thought that was. Yeah, anyway, called in 4 at once.
Wow.
They were Jake's,
Mhm.
but I'm happy for my first turkey.
It's awesome.
Yep. And now we have a fan for the studio. Yep. But that's been my week in the
Most
woods.
importantly.
Yeah. Eric, how about you?
Well, my week was on water, but we just finished up with our Salem First Hunting and Fishing Club fishing event this last weekend. We were trying to hit those bedded bass. They're in the spawn right now, and they're guarding pretty hard, so we just kind of didn't have a whole lot of luck. I think the biggest fish of the day was 3. You know, I was pitching out there, and you could drop it right in front of its face. I even hit a couple of them right in the top of the head with no avail. So it was a little tough, but I'm looking forward to this fishing season, so it'll be cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
So Nathan, do you do any fishing?
Yeah, I do. I don't do as much fishing as I do hunting, but growing up, Dad would always take me down, and we do salmon or steelhead or both.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, take me down to like South Coast.
Oh, okay.
We've fished all those rivers, but yeah, more recently I've gotten into high lake fishing, so I'll go.
Oh,
up.
sweet.
Yeah, this is the time of year, but this year the snowpack is so high.
Yep.
I can't really
Yep.
access any trailheads. I can't even
Uh-huh.
get close. So I've tried. Yeah, so I'm holding off on high lake fishing,
Mhm.
and you got to beat mosquito season. See, you go
Yes,
early or you
it
go
is
late.
rough.
You do not go when mosquitoes get peak, and
Oh,
that
yeah.
that could be around mid to early June is when they get really bad.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
yeah, so I haven't done much fishing yet this year. I took my kids last night to a local lake, and we were able to catch 3 rainbows.
Nice.
Which was
nice.
fun. Yeah, they're all planners.
Some stalkers.
Yeah, they're all
Yep.
planners. Yeah, for sure.
Sweet.
And then in the last week, I actually was in Northeast Oregon helping a buddy hunt for bear.
Oh,
and
cool.
Yeah, this year, you know, has been a little late too, with a cold spring and also a lot of snow and a slower green up.
Yeah.
And that green up's really important for the bear
Yeah.
activity. And so with this buddy, we ended up just the strategy was cover miles. So I think we covered 16 miles pretty easily that day. We were at 10 miles at noon. And then
wow.
that was a break to eat, and then we kept going for the rest of the day.
Yep.
And then elevation, I mean, we were dropping down ridges, so it wasn't too bad. It wasn't like we were going to the bottom of any canyons. We were mostly covering ridges. The bear really do cruise big, long ridge systems.
Yeah.
And we did. That's what we cut. We cut bears that were just cruising for tracks.
And you're just looking for a boar then that's cruising?
I guess so. I mean, we're looking for any bear in that unit. It's a lower numbers unit, and so we were covering miles to try to turn up a fresh sign.
Yeah.
And we only did find one fresh pile of bear scat, and it was like a few days old. And then all the tracks were melted out. There was one set of tracks that had actually, in this unit, there's some private property where it dipped into. And so we were like, that's great. But yeah, so we couldn't go after it. But that was that was the fresh track, and it was within a day old.
I hate how many times I'm bear hunting, or even if I'm just deer hunting and I'm interested in seeing a bear, and I find like a giant fresh pile of bear crap, and you're like, okay, there's a bear here, you know, but I have yet to make anything out of that in the timber.
Yeah.
You ever timber hunt bear, or just
That's kind of what we
open
were
ridges?
doing. I mean,
Okay.
we were in the timber mostly, in order to then glass the opposing hillside that's open.
Got it. Yeah.
And so we were running out these ridges in the timber. That's when we we're cutting their tracks. But there's no sign on the open hillsides, which is just odd.
Well, because they probably didn't have snow, right? So you couldn't see tracks. You would just be looking for crap at that point.
Well, yeah, but they turn rocks and then it's pretty
Tear up
obvious.
Stumps.
Yep, and then the other is that they leave a pretty good sized print. Bear do leave a good print in the mud, and this time of year, ground's pretty soft still and wet.
Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty helpful.
It's remarkably, it's pretty easy to follow bear sign. They leave a big track.
Out here in the northwest area where I'm
Not as
hunting,
easy.
I mean, that green up was later. I think that was a statewide thing. Green up was a little behind. I mean, obviously in the low elevation, I was able to sneak up into some pretty green areas, but as soon as you get up, I mean, the snow that I was hunting in for turkey season, that was only 1,000 feet. Like that was foothills low, you know, and so it's just been kind of cold and wet, but we've had some nice weather and stuff is growing pretty good rate right now.
I would say if anything, you could look at the positive of this year is that the animals are really going to be concentrated where the habitat's the best. And so while you're saying that the snow is at 1,000 feet, there are some areas that the snow is melted out much sooner and then it's greened up sooner. So those animals would be concentrated, especially the bear, where the feed's at, the best, food source. So that's one thing you learn a lot on years like this, where it's an anomaly, because then they'll be there next year, even when the snow is not on at all. It's just because that's the best feed.
So do you think the fawn drop's a little bit behind this year because of weather conditions and stuff like that? Or
gosh, that's a great question, and I don't have a clue, right? I'm not out in the woods enough to see when the fawns really drop.
And you'd think that'd be more affected by the November rut as opposed to the spring conditions.
I think you're right. Yep, if it was an early or late rut, and that is weather dependent too, to really concentrate, or what got the deer moving, what put the does into estrus, all those things.
Yeah.
That's a huge variable. But it's interesting. It's an interesting concept how age kind of plays a role in the rut and the cycles, and are the cycles moving a little bit early, trending earlier or later? And to us, we only think within a couple years of history. But to them, to the species, I mean, we're talking about all of time.
Yeah.
So to them, it doesn't matter if things are a week early for the last 10 years, because it might go back to a week late for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and the questioning if they even know the difference, how do they perceive time?
Exactly.
To them, it's just, it's warm
this is
today.
Life, man.
Yep. Yeah, I know. And I don't know, it's going to be weird with the seasons all going a week later. There's going to be a lot of deer killed. I really think there is. So we'll see how that affects. And interrupting the rut like that,
Push it later.
Yeah.
Well, survival of the fittest, right? So all the bucks that are eager beaver and get out and start breeding does are going to get shot. And so
which already happens during the regular seasons. Yeah.
So it could push the rut back. That's an interesting thought.
Well, so is that going to push the
future.
archery season even further out of the rut?
Yeah, I would say that's my number one pet peeve. While a lot of people are going to benefit from it, archers will actually lose out, not only on what is prime time, which is that Thanksgiving week, but the Thanksgiving holidays. So most people have Thanksgiving holidays off. So Thanksgiving and the day after, Thursday, Friday. And so whether or not you hunt on Thanksgiving, but you'll usually have that Friday off. So that's a 3-day weekend of time for most working people. So we're losing out on a holiday that is a hunting day. Yeah. That's a huge loss.
Yep.
So now and the other thing is there's another holiday, which is it's Veterans Day. And so usually down south, I could go early on the Friday, the day before season opens, which is Veterans Day, so I could benefit from that holiday as well. So it's kind of really making it difficult for archery, even to push us further beyond the rut, and also giving up some valuable vacation time.
Yeah, I really hope it's a 1-year thing, because I mean, if it's continual, then you might even just buy a general season tag and archery hunt during that, because of the timing. Yeah,
I don't know if I don't know the facts on this, but I heard that this year was based on how the calendar fell. That's what I was told. I went to the ODFW commission. I raised my hand. I was like, why is it a week later this year? They said it's just purely how the calendar fell. And then within a few weeks, maybe a month later, I saw it on Facebook. Somebody posted that in the future, there's a change that proposed to be adopted that it will permanently push everything back 1 week.
Wow.
And so I don't know if that's true, like will be true or not in the future, because I haven't seen the future regs. But that was a statement on Facebook that was not connected to how this year is getting pushed back a week.
If that happens, that's going to be a good case study to see just how much hunting behavior affects something as like nailed down as rut timing. Because, that our seasons have been generally in the same timeline for quite a while. But I have noticed in the last handful of years that first week of October has been really hot and dry. And archery elk season has been really hot and dry.
Climate.
If depending on how much weather affects, because there's so many different theories on what really kicks off the rut. You know, and a lot of people, it's moon phase, which obviously is not affected by anything. But if we think it's weather, then that's already going to change the rut. And now hunting pressure combined with weather changes, it's going to be really interesting to see if they adopt that, what kind of changes we're going to see in deer behavior and
Absolutely.
elk behavior.
Yeah, it will change it. I mean, we see it for elk hunting. Elk become call wise.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So
Yep.
I mean, we already know that a human can influence the way that elk interact and behave by talking less and coming in less. I mean, they wise up. It doesn't take too long before now it's like every generation of elk knows what a call is. And you really have to work hard to find a call.
I mean,
dumb
from
elk.
babies, they're hearing it and
Yep.
they're seeing, hunters pushing herds around.
Yeah.
And another thing that makes elk shut up that's kind of changing in Oregon is the presence of wolves.
Yeah.
It's a good transition. We wanted to bring to you the local news story. Maybe it was a few weeks ago by now, and certainly more than that by the time anyone hears this. There's a confirmed wolf sighting on Mosby Creek just out of Cottage Grove. Nathan, I don't know how much you've heard about that if you happen to see it, but it was this short video of a collared wolf on the side of the road, right down into the dip that goes to Mosby Creek on the huge chunk of Weyerhaeuser out of Cottage Grove. Which I'm pretty sure that's a permit-only area. But I don't know. The ODF, I'm saying
That's what I
fessed
saw.
up to it.
That's what I saw. You saw that they confirmed it,
They
right? They
confirmed
verified,
it.
yes, there all are wolves in this area. Yeah, I saw that.
Yes, and they confirmed that this specific wolf, because it's collared, they know is a 2-year-old male wolf called OR-125 who was born in Douglas County. Because the wolf's collared, they obviously know everything about this wolf. It's like their pet. They have a name for it, OR-125. But
Yeah.
so
And a lot of resources.
Yeah. So they confirmed that that is true. There's a wolf there from Douglas County. And Douglas County is not too far from Cottage Grove, or where it could have moved from. It's not too far, but it's still remarkable to see one in that particular location because we haven't seen wolves there.
Yeah.
And it really just makes me think that we're going to see wolves in the Northwest Coast area like soon.
Yeah.
With how much they've been spreading. I have some figures here. This is what ODF-NW says there is. So, I mean, depending on who you talk to, we can assume there's probably a lot more than this. But at the end of 2022, so this just recently, ODF-NW claimed there was 178 wolves making up 36 different either breeding pairs or packs. So that's in Oregon, 36 different packs/breeding pairs that are established in an area. 10 years ago, they said there were only 64 wolves and only 3 packs in Oregon. So to go from 64 wolves to 178 wolves in 10 years,
There's a lot more
that's
than
a pretty
that.
big jump.
If you have one locally here, there's multiple. I've seen a couple. I've seen 4 on camera in the Cascades. We're talking about the Cascades and local.
Yeah.
Northeast Oregon, where the population's at, where there's wolves everywhere. I mean, guys, it's easy to see a pack of 8 sitting on a ridge. So Joe Lewis, he hunts the northeast corner pretty heavily, especially for cats. And he drew a spring bear and a cat and then purchased his cat tag. So he killed both in one day. He's a stud. He's a cool guy. I really like him. Yeah.
That is,
anyway,
what's his name?
Joe Lewis. You got to
All
look
right.
him up.
Look up Joe Lewis.
He's also doing taxidermy. He does like a lot of freelance type work.
Okay.
But he's a really neat person. So he got back into an area, ends up turning up both a bear and a cat, makes a stalk on both within an hour and shoots both the same day.
Oh
and
my
packs
goodness.
them out. Yeah,
wow.
but
Archery hunting?
No, it's rifle.
Rifle?
Yeah, I mean, again, with
don't
predators.
sound too disappointed, man.
With predators, I'm totally in favor of rifle hunting. I'll do it.
Sure.
I'm primarily archery, but I have rifle hunted mostly in the past couple years. I never rifle hunted until I had my first kid, and then I had to explain to my wife that I was leaving to go hunt for bear. And so the agreement was that if you just take the first bear you see and use a rifle, because then it would sure my odds. It would make it nearly 100%.
Quicker
yeah.
job.
Then she was totally cool with me going. And so that's turned into now bear hunting. I'll take a rifle. But so yeah, Joe Lewis, he got the bear and the cat. And while he was out there, he turned up 8 wolves bedded on a ridgetop. And his comment on Facebook was 8 reasons why the elk numbers are going down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good point. So for him to see 8 on one ridge, I don't think those numbers are right. I think that they're so far from the truth. And I think a lot of it has to do with how they consider a wolf, if it's protected or less protected when you talk about numbers. The other is resources. So they're going to dump more resources into that animal, that species, if there's less numbers. And how do they verify it? There's no way to verify it. It's a joke when they talk about blacktail numbers, because if you go to the ODF&W commissions, not to put them on blast, I love ODF&W and what they're trying to do here locally for blacktail,
absolutely.
but it's very limited. They talk about having a couple circuits that they'll do certain times of the year in order to prove how many bucks per doe are in an area. Very, very specific areas.
Yeah.
It's just not a true representation of what the population is.
Yeah.
And that's because there's not the funding for it.
Yeah, and there's other things that I mean, I'm so conflicted because I love the ODF&W. I'm in full support. Buy your stinking tags. Do not ever kill anything without a tag, please, because I cannot stand that. It just makes my blood boil.
Yeah.
And I don't care if your money's going to the ODF&W. That's good, because we do need to research these things.
Yeah.
But there's so many habitat projects that they're doing instead of predator management.
Yeah.
It's such a highly debated topic because you
Yeah.
can't extirpate predators from the landscape.
Yeah.
But you probably could have an effect if every spring, like in the end of May, if everyone killed a whole bunch of cougars and coyotes, maybe it could help the deer in a specific area, and the elk. But then, I hear about them doing elk habitat cleanups in the areas where there's wolves.
Yeah.
What's really going to help the elk?
Right. Exactly. It's that predator management. And what's interesting too is when I went to an ODFW commission meeting, and so they're just laying out the proposed changes for the upcoming year. It's the local meeting. It's not at some statewide sort of meeting. This is just our local staff, the local biologists. They're just kind of sharing what they do. They were excited about the different studies they're doing and sharing. But then from an onlooker, a person that's an avid hunter, grown up doing this, to hear them say that climate change is one of the number one variables in what is changing the habitat, and that our deer are less likely to get the prime feed source because they can't compete with the other species. So like the elk or something else that are eating up, or the climate change, which is not allowing this proper feed for fawn recruitment and fawn survival. And it's like, really?
Which is kind of backwards from what they say is the clear cuts and the burns provide so much food for the deer and the elk.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, there's been more fires. That should mean more food.
Eventually, yeah, with that. Yes, I mean, burns and cover and different things and management of the timber, all those things help them survive. They help them survive not because better feed, but by surviving from predators, more escapement and more cover. Yeah, because there's a ton of cats.
Yeah,
I mean, you can talk to anybody around here and they've killed, I mean, if they know somebody that has livestock, somebody has killed a cat that's already taken some of their livestock. It's really bad. And now we're adding wolves in the mix. So we already see it in Alaska and Canada, what the wolves are doing, and then also in Idaho and how it's spreading now to Oregon. And I haven't heard too much in Oregon about crazy stories of wolves just mass killing essentially, or wiping out an area, but it's about to happen.
I mean, as far as livestock goes, I've definitely heard a couple stories from Eastern Oregon.
Yeah.
Anyway, and onto the note of cougars, like, I'm glad that it's a 365 a day season and you can get additional tags, and it's a cheap tag.
Yeah.
So my encouragement for everyone listening is to get a cougar
Make an
tag.
effort.
And don't just have it. A lot of people just have it because, what if I see one when I'm hunting? But
Sportsman pack.
I make an effort to do a handful of trips every winter and predator calling and whatnot to see if I can get something in. I haven't taken a cougar yet. They're a hard thing to find, but have you taken one?
No, I've never taken a cat.
Yeah.
I've tried. I've gone out intentionally for them multiple times. I've been close. Like, I've seen them at 40 yards before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's real close.
Yeah, my dad has taken a couple. I don't know for sure. I think he's killed 2 with his bow. Both were calling. And then one time he had a cat. It was actually Thanksgiving Day, and he was out blacktail hunting, and he was in a sleeping bag. He'd fallen asleep because he got in real early before daylight. It was cold, put on a sleeping bag. Wakes up and he looks to his left and there's a cat at 20 yards and it's crawling. It's actually like stalking him, right? And he's, of all things, have you ever seen my dad wear that Scoofy deer hat on any of my films or photos? He's wearing a deer hat. He's like a deer sausage, just immobile, waiting to be ate. And this cat is belly crawling at 20 yards. So my dad says, he's like, I thought about getting my camera, but it kind of looked like it was stalking me.
Yeah.
So I decided to pick up my bow instead, and he shoots it at 20 yards. He says the thing jumps 10 feet high,
That's
tears
scary.
off. Yeah, and because it was more or less a self-defense type shot, not like the type of shot we would on a deer or elk where it's the most ethical shot, this was like a life safety shot. And so it hit kind of through, I would say, like the front of the chest. Like it might be fatal, which is what we want, but he was unable to recover the cat. They're pretty crafty, and I think he followed it through snow drifts and in and out of snow for a long ways. And I think
blood trailing or just tracks?
Blood trailing.
Yeah.
And I think it eventually just dipped under or hidden into something, and they're so sneaky. They'll let you walk right by.
I've heard of a lot of lost cats, you know, for the few people that have taken shots at them.
Well, and the adrenaline side of it too. I've killed 2.
Oh, wow.
And I killed 2 in the same spot.
Wow.
Same wood pile at my house. Shot them from the second story of my house.
Oh my gosh.
Don't ever do that, by the way. Don't shoot inside your house.
Every little bit of an echo.
Yeah, every single picture in our bedroom came off the wall. And I think I was deaf for like a week and a half. And my wife was super pissed that I poked the gun through the screen to take my ethical shot.
I think that's worth it. And it's actually very noble of you.
Saving the deer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it was actually saving my dogs. So they were actually stalking my 2 dogs. My wife comes home, says, oh, yeah, there's 2 little beady eyes looking at me from the woodpile. So I run upstairs, getting pretty dark out by that point. Pick up the eyes, identify that it's a cougar, and smoke checked it from second story inside the house.
Awesome. Well, so that is our local news. Wolves coming to woods near you soon. So keep your eyes out. Make sure to be a part. You said you go to committees and whatnot with ODF and W.
Yeah, I think reporting it is key. I think sharing that information is key. And then just keep yourself from trying to fabricate what's happening or you're seeing, but just keep it to the facts and then share it, because that's the only way to raise awareness of what's going on out there. I think also when you find kills and you find evidence of wolf sign, I think it's important to share that too, because while the staff get a lot of resources and funding to manage the wolves, I feel like, again, they're managing to keep the wolves alive, not to manage the game that they are required to manage, which is the deer and elk populations. The other thing, last piece on that, if you look at over time with the elk numbers in the Cascades, they have basically nearly been wiped out. The elk populations in the Cascades over time have been decimated compared to what they used to be.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is hunting pressure and also the increase of cat populations. And so if you wipe it out, there's nothing saying that these elk have to return to that habitat. So then it becomes a void or an empty space, empty of the wildlife. I pay for my hunting tags because I want to see the wildlife. I don't want to see the predator. So why are we managing for the predator that is technically at this point really an invasive species? The wolves that are being introduced are invasive. I would love to meet with the best biologists on it because I know that they're not from here. If it's not from here, it's invasive. Stop tampering. That's the message. Don't tamper if it's going to make the system not recover.
Man, I'd love to see more data on that, because I've done research. I mean, my research is Google searches, but I've just tried to read article after article to find out. Here's what I've heard is that we used to have a different subspecies of wolf here, whether it was a subspecies of the gray wolf or not, but they introduced the gray wolves from Canada into Yellowstone, which have drifted in. And there's people who say they've been planted here, but
They were.
Okay. And so the thing is, I haven't seen like any actual biologist fess up to or support this information,
Okay. It has been. You'd have to talk to the right person. My dad's actually gone to all the wolf symposiums since day one. So he is like a breath of information. If you want to know anything about wolves, you talk to my dad. So yeah, they did. They pulled the wolves from Canada. So the other thing about bloodlines, I mean, hounds, dogs, they are incredibly connected to their bloodline and what they're bred to do. If you pull a wolf that's from, deer are bigger in Canada. Every animal is bigger than Canada. Why would you pull a bigger canine from Canada and call it a gray wolf? Okay. And then take that bloodline, bring it to Idaho where you keep it in a pen for a while to let it acclimate or something, and then start introducing it into all of the West. Well, it's going to do what it did up north. It's going to kill more things and stash them because it was preserved longer from cold temps during the winter. So it's going to be a better killer, a bigger animal, more efficient at doing so. It's not from here.
Yeah.
And then Yeah, so my dad could talk for ages. The other thing is that he's gone to these wolf symposiums. On day one, they said that the wolves were swimming the river. That's how they were getting here. So it was a little inconsistent.
Yeah.
And then later on, they did say, no, okay, so we had an initiative. It's been funded by the Federal Fish and Game, and that we actually planted wolves in the northeast corner. Homegrown. That's how they did it. It was not here by accident.
Yeah. So a guy like me who hasn't been a part of those, who I've done, like I said, hours of searching, I can't find that information on the internet. I can't find that information on a podcast. It's just
Public records request would be the only way, and you'd have to pay a fee.
Oh,
because while it is public information, it's a public entity. They should be able to release anything. They don't have to. They can say that it's confidential. And so the only way would be Freedom of Information Act is that you'd have to file for that and then pay a fee. That's the only way to get that type of information, and you have to know the right person to ask.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's huge. And when we look at the wolves in the northeast of the U.S., those wolves are way smaller than the ones that they've planted here. The eastern wolf, which is also called a timber wolf, but the eastern wolf, males get up to about 50 to 60 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So we think about people who say they've been killing 150-pound wolves in our side of the country. I would rather have a 60-pound wolf here than a 150-pound wolf here. All right, well, enough talk about wolves. Let's get into our conversation with Nathan. We're real excited for your insight. Thanks for what you've given so far. But Eric, you want to hit him with the icebreakers?
All right, so we usually do 5 icebreaker questions just to get stuff going, but we've been talking for a few minutes, so we're gonna start it off with this one: fishing or hunting?
Hunting.
Okay. We kind of figured you'd go that way.
Yep.
Bait caster or spinning reel if you go fishing?
Bait caster. Man, it's like, I just want to catch stuff. But however, like Panther Martin, like if I flip that out, I'm going to catch a fish. And it's kind of one of those things where I like to just more or less enjoy and relax.
Sure.
So bait's like the more enjoy, relax versus a spinner or something you're going to be doing more action, which is fun too.
And we don't talk about fly fishing on this podcast.
So we don't talk about fly fishing, but we both got skunked by a fly fisherman at our fishing tournament.
Showed you up or what?
Oh man, he was like,
if you're on point,
then
you kill it, because that's you're tricking the fish into the most natural native thing to eat.
Yep,
you just got to be good.
That's exactly what it was. This kid was pretty amazing to watch. So.
Yeah, it's an art.
Bow or rifle?
Bow
all day.
Dad owns an archery shop.
You better.
I was a shoe-in for sure.
Traditional or compound bow?
My first love really is traditional bow.
Yeah.
When I grew up shooting, I always had bows that were more resembling a traditional bow because it wasn't really a compound when I started shooting. So then over time, Dad would take me out to shoot nutria or fish, bow fishing.
Yeah.
And so I shoot recurve. So then I developed this, skill. It's kind of like throwing a ball with shooting a traditional bow. And then anytime I shoot it, I love it. It's just not as ethical. I feel challenged morally to use a traditional bow to hunt.
Sure.
Some guys can do it and they can be strict and disciplined. They're going to stay in their effective range. For me, I can't. I know what it's like to shoot a compound, and I want to push that effective range. I want to push it because I'm the type that likes to push my boundaries. It's not good with archery. You need to stay, especially traditional archery.
Blacktail or mule deer?
Blacktail.
All right.
But I do love mule deer. It's just here in Oregon, that opportunity is limited, so I want blacktail.
Yeah, I was kind of curious what you'd answer. Like I was hopeful and knew that you'd say blacktail, but I've seen you've been doing some mule deer stuff lately.
So fun. I love mule deer hunting. It's just.
So the next question is coast or the Cascades to hunt in?
Yeah, not the coast.
The coast is pretty difficult to hunt. I've noticed when I lived over there, the elk population was pretty decent. I move over to the valley and you don't see a whole lot. Compared to over there.
That's almost like saying, do you want to swim in the ocean for fun or do you want to go to the lake for fun? And because it's just a different type of fun. Like if you like fighting for your life, then go to the coast all day.
Yeah.
I mean, but no, it's steeper, it's rugged. Some areas have massive amounts of poison oak, and then to stay on a hillside is pretty challenging. It's so steep.
I'm just recovering from the poison oak I got shooting my turkey. So
Yep, I was out of the coast a couple weeks ago and I got poison oak all over my arms.
Yeah, and I was just talking to Eric, like I never used to get it ever. And then I went hunting in Southern Oregon down way down by Crater Lake, and I got poison oak in all the places you don't want poison oak, and ever since then I have been allergic.
You get it.
Yep, and
That's the way it works.
I get it bad.
So, yeah, I don't know any of the science behind this, but I was in the Snake River unit, and there's poison sumac, I guess.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so I was wearing shorts, and there's also these native rose bushes, so I was scratching up my legs real bad. And I didn't even know there was such a thing as poison sumac or just a poison oak type brush out there, and was just, I guess it caked over my legs and it got in my cuts.
Ooh.
And I didn't get it that bad, but I had a person with me that then was like almost deathly flared up from the poison oak.
Wow.
And so I just got it literally in cuts, and it was on
You
my
got the
hands.
hypodermic treatment.
Yeah, it was like on my hands and my legs a little bit, but not that bad. Just a couple cuts. And then ever since then, I get it. And every time I get it, it's a little worse. So it's almost like if you get it in your bloodstream, then your body attacks it and then forms almost like antibodies to it. So then it continues to, we got poison
It's
oak,
worse
let's
and
attack, and then it gets worse. That's what my theory is, but I have no idea.
So moving the show along, can you share with us your favorite hunting or fishing story or outdoor experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, a lot of things come to mind, but I would say before I get to the favorite story, it always involves my dad. So my dad got me into archery, got me into hunting, and I have so many stories as being a little guy following my dad from this Eastern Oregon to the Western Oregon, just everywhere. I'll start with the first is that my first elk was with my dad, and we were in the Cascade Range. The way it worked is I was like, Dad, are we going to go this weekend? And he was like, sure. Yeah. I mean, we can go around here. It's not very good. And I was like, yeah, I want to go. And we only it was the weekend before what would be my first day of high school. So as a freshman in high school. So I was like, yeah, I'm up for anything. It doesn't matter. Let's go. And he's like, it's going to be pretty hard hike. I just don't know of anything else. And my dad was telling me that he had killed one of his first bulls back in this area. So I was like, I'm up for it. So we go on, I believe it was like a Saturday, and we get to the trailhead before daylight, hike in a few miles on a trail. We cross a river on some old growth logs, and then we scramble over to a ridge line. We climb up this ridge line through just lava rock, and we climb up about 1,500 feet. And then Dad's behind me, and he just bugles, and then boom, we got a bull. And
wow,
so,
nice.
Yep.
I love that moment.
Yep. And this was like one of those things where I was not anticipating any elk for the day.
And you just kind of look at each other with big eyes at that point, right?
Yeah. It's like, oh crap, you go forward. And so, so that's what happened is that I kind of lurched forward 10 yards. And so this pattern of, the bull wouldn't ever give me a shot because I'm pretty young, can't pull the right amount of weight. And also equipment was more limited when I was 13 or 14 or 15 years old. So yeah, to shoot 40 yards was like bottom pin. This bull doesn't give me a shot. We pursue it, call it back in, doesn't give me a shot. So it was on time number 3, and Dad tells me to go, okay, this time you're going 40, 50 yards out, and I'm going to stay back. Well, that time the bull comes blowing in past me, flying in, and it gets to right up to my dad, 10 feet from my dad, hits the brakes and is like,
sees
you're
your
not
dad
elk.
at that point?
Yep, sees him, face to face, flips around, the bull's running out. And I'm young, never killed a bull. I've killed a couple deer, a couple bear by this point, and with my bow. And so the elk's running by, and I just go, stop the bull in his tracks. He just skids.
It was your bear hunting woof?
I guess, yeah. I just woofed at it,
Yeah.
and then the thing hits the brakes. I draw back, shoot, and it was 45-yard shot, quartering away, nailed it. And the bull ran maybe 80 yards.
Amazing.
Yeah, and one of those things where I'm shaking like
Yeah,
crazy,
yeah.
can't even hardly think or talk.
Uh-huh.
And my dad's like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I shot a bull. I think it looked okay. I have no idea. It's like trying to describe something that you've never done.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I visualized it in 1,000,001 dreams and watching hunting.
Yeah.
But when it happens so fast since your first time, I have no idea. My pin was on it like I thought it was. You black out.
Yeah, you black out.
Mm-hmm.
You almost go blind.
Hyperventilating.
Yeah.
And so my dad tries to get enough information out of me and basically let's go look for blood. I mean, you're not telling me anything bad. So we go up and sure enough, there's some drops. It's not convincing. There's just some drops of blood. He's like, that's pretty good for right away. And I was shooting old Steel Force 75 grain broadheads, and they were cut on contact broadheads. So it's a really long, just picture like an arrowhead. They're really long. Cut on contact is an arrowhead, for example. The other styles,
Wait, does it only have 2 blades?
it had bleeders.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like a
like a
single,
flat-
it's like a flat
wow.
single blade, but then it had 2 little bleeder blades on the sides with steel force. For pulling low weight, you wanted a contact broadhead for youth.
Less
You wanted the
force
bleeder.
needed to penetrate.
Yep, less force, exactly. Better penetration. So we trail for maybe 80 yards. Dad sees it first. He's like, there he is. And we get up there. And this is the quote that stands with me for lifetime is he says, I wish so badly that your Grandpa Endicott could be here to see you with this bull.
Wow.
I wish so badly. And like that,
Wow.
chokes me up just saying it.
I love that. And man, just thinking of how much your grandpa's legacy meant to your dad and now to you, and being in this room in the, I don't know, the clubhouse, what do you call this room?
We just call it the barn.
The barn, and there's just taxidermy all over the place of, your family's heritage in the woods out there. So such a special moment to hear that,
Yeah.
first experience. It's more than just the elk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there is, of course, people do identify and attach to the excitement. It's like you experience the excitement, but it's more than just the rush that you feel in that moment. There's so much more to it as being a human. What it means to be a human
Yeah.
is that you got excited when you were successful over something that would sustain you.
Yeah.
So there's so much more to it. And then beyond that, there's this connection between all creation and humans, all things that were created. And so when you have that bond with nature, and you experience it firsthand, raised in it, it's very meaningful.
That's one thing we talk about on this show a lot, is just the deep intrinsic connection to the land that we have as human beings, and how so much society has drifted away from that. The analogy that I always give is when you microwave a Hot Pocket, you don't think about the fact that the meat came from a living animal, and that the cheese came from an animal, and the grain was grown in the ground, and how you're eating something directly from the earth, more or less, but you're putting a middleman in there.
Several.
You're so separated from the process, and hunting engages that natural connection to the land, skipping the middleman, getting your own food from this living creature that, sorry, but if you are not a vegetarian, you cannot be anti-hunting.
Yeah.
Because if you eat meat, it's almost sickening to think of how many people are so separate from the process of where their food comes from.
Right.
And how there's a whole nother level of perspective that comes from obtaining your own food.
Well, even
from
mass
nature.
agriculture and farming kills animals. Different variety. It's not the cute, rendering of a bear or rendering of a deer. It's not those cute animated Disney-like things that people attach to.
Yeah.
It's shrews and mice and different things. There's casualties along the way, but even if you say you're a vegetarian, there's still some blood in the process. So whether or not you want to have it on your own hands, it's still gonna take. That's been talked about by tons of people. Yeah.
Yeah. When I worked on the farm, killing gophers was like my job in the winters.
Yeah.
I killed hundreds of gophers,
Yep.
I even got a bonus per gopher to kill more gophers.
Yeah.
And so, if you look at a gopher, right, it's kind of cute, so maybe keep that in mind.
I don't know about that. Maybe
okay,
on Disney.
one time I killed a pure white gopher, and that
that's
was pretty
cool.
cool, but it didn't have red eyes. It had
Whoa.
brown eyes.
Whoa.
Like black eyes like a gopher, but it was pure white. And we kept it in the freezer for a while because it was cool.
We kept
Yeah.
that gopher. Full body mount.
Yeah, me and my cousin Jake.
Boone and Crockett.
It was pretty great. Yeah, it was rare. But people who don't go into the woods and never see these creatures think of them as some sort of a sacred, mysterious animal, and they put them on this level with the wolves, where they don't want humans to be involved in that at all. But humans are inescapably involved with nature and with all these creatures. You can look at it 2 ways. Either for one, we are a product of nature, and we, as human beings, once lived in the woods or in the desert or wherever humans came from as a part of nature. Or you could try to think, well, humans aren't a part of nature anymore, but the animals that we see, I'm even talking about here in Oregon, they were almost extinct not really that long ago, but through human involvement and management, the populations have grown.
Yeah.
If humans suddenly disappeared, it's not like the population of the deer would go skyrocket through the roof. maybe temporarily, but then the predators would take over.
Right.
There's this balance
balance.
in the ecosystem that whether or not it's a good thing, humans are now a dependent part of that ecosystem, that we deliberately control the populations of what animals are on the landscape through hunting, right? Hunting is how we control that, tag allotment, and that's why we buy our tags to fund the research to keep track of all that.
Yeah, there's that at the state organizational level, so all the fish and games, but there's also all of the foundations, so Wild Sheep Foundation or Mule Deer. You know, there's all these different foundations that are proactive in helping, you know, promote the resource or the wildlife to return to these wild places, because yes, it was nearly wiped out. There's a lot of good voices out there. Recently, I saw Jason Matzinger social media post, and he basically, to spoil this clip down, it was a really pretty clip of him walking and looking at wildlife and different things, but he's talking about some facts here. And it boils down to, like, if you like seeing wildlife, think a hunter. You know, think all of the fees that go into the harvest of some animal. And then even in Arizona recently, the statewide raffle or auction tag, I forget how it was auction. It was the highest paid tag in like all history for any animal over sheep or anything was the deer.
Really?
Yeah, and it was some insane number. I want to say like $120,000 for this one statewide auction deer tag. I forget the term. It would be like a governor's tag in Oregon, but the equivalent down there in Arizona. And so that's $120,000 directly promoting mule deer in Arizona.
For
That's
one,
huge,
for one animal. Taking one animal off the landscape.
Hey, just a quick interruption. Fun fact, the highest ever paid for a deer tag was broken recently in Arizona, but it was not for $120,000. It was for $725,000 in February of this year. So that's a lot of money for a single deer.
To think about then the value of your wildlife. Wildlife has a value. And so then if we're promoting or not properly managing the predators, you know, it's taking away from the value that it is worth to humans. And humans, again, you said, are intrinsically tied to this wildlife.
Exactly. Whether or not we used to be a part of the landscape or not, we are now.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
And we can't just back out. And so we need hunting to manage and create wildlife for the future generations.
Yeah.
That way your children can have that meaningful experience where you say, well, hopefully grandpa's here, right, with them during that.
That's what I'm about.
Let's not remove humans from the environment.
Right.
Yeah. Message to the anti-hunters. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit, really timely, because it's blacktail, or I keep saying blacktail. They start with black. It's black bear spring season. At least in the Northwest area. Are all the different areas running congruently as far as openings?
Yeah.
Okay. You've hunted black bear. You've hunted black bear with bow, which is, you know, for a lot of people, an extra challenge for everyone. And you found success in the spring bear hunting seasons. I was wondering if you could give us some tips that you've gleaned from your successes in the woods. What are some of the things that you learned that you go back to, you fall back on?
My experience has all been in open, high desert type country. So that's like the northeast corner. There's a lot of units up there that are controlled hunts, just like what we now have for like the southwest or northwest tags. So my advice is going to be related to what I've experienced up there. I've been out for black bear on the west side, but it's much more rare. And I usually see it as an opportunity thing when I'm out for fall bear. So fall bear opens August 1st. That's when I've hunted the west side. So most of it about the northeast. So with northeast, I've taken a few bear with a bow, mostly as a youth, because the opportunity was easier to get a tag. The youth tags were more available. So dad would take me every year. It was 100% odds I would draw my bear tag. We would look for places that had very, very long ridge systems. And off that long ridge system, there's all these little fingers that take off. And one side would be
like
timbered.
The descending fingers down into the canyons.
Exactly. Down into the main canyon where there might be a stream or a river. And off of those, depending on what exposure, sun exposure, north, south facing, east facing, west facing, it's always the northeast facing ridge has the timber, thick timber, and kind of the north facing. And then there's always an exposed hillside to it. And so we would look for those that had this long ridge system with a good timbered side and a good open side. So the bear felt, their safety to retreat into the timber, and they would also walk that timber line and kind of eat, so they wouldn't be too far exposed without getting back into the timber for safety. So the bear typically would start low in the season, and they work their way up to then eventually being primarily on top of everything, on top of ridges where there's more timber then. And then it's much more challenging. So you want to go early in the season in order to catch the more lethargic bear, and also to target them when they're in that lower feed, more open terrain before they get up on top. So that's kind of the big overall, I would say, strategy.
Is that applicable in areas where it's mostly just thick timber, or is that really only in that unique kind of blending of environments that you're talking about?
No, it's also applicable in thick timber, but where there's less openings. And then that way, I guess when you have fewer openings, those are what you would target, especially on the west side. So if you find that same sort of system, big long ridge system, very gradual in its climb, and then there might be a steep finger ridge that comes off of it, then you would hunt that finger ridge and look for the openings on it. Bear typically as high as possible without being out of good feed. So if you like you were talking about the snow melt happening later this year. So of course they're not going to be up. They're going to be up as high as they can, where they could still have good green, fresh sprouts of something. Bear eat a lot. There's if there's a garden, a natural garden, they're going to be all over it. They're going to be eating the green plants,
skunk cabbage, and they're going to be standing just out in the middle of it eating, or are they going to be sticking to the edge? Yeah.
They stick to the edge.
Little openings.
They'll stick to the edge, but yeah, I mean, bear are I don't know, they're weird. They're not the smartest animal, right? It's like they can't see super well. They can't hear exceptionally well. They just can smell.
Yeah, and that was my next question is how much does the wind, due to their smell, impact where a bear chooses to be? Are they smart enough where, kind of like a blacktail, they're going to pose up? I mean, obviously, if they don't rely on sight, with the wind kind of blowing behind so they can see down, or is a bear just kind of where it is, but it's always sniffing?
Yeah, I don't feel like a bear's an animal that's going to set the wind in their favor for survival. It's like they're not really, they didn't really adapt to be afraid of anything. They're kind of just loofing around, what is going on with that thing? Yeah, I would say instinctually they want to be near trees, because tree is their safety. They run up the tree and then boom, that's safety. So it's like they don't set up the wind in their favor. They're just goofing around, milling around, eating stuff, having a good time, but they want to be next to a tree. So that when they do sense a predator, which probably was a cat or a wolf or something like that, they run up the tree and they can elude them.
Have you seen big boars climbing trees? Or
yeah.
Every
bear
zipping right
I've
up.
ever seen has also been up in a tree. There's no bear that I haven't seen that would also be able to climb a tree.
Okay.
Like if you jumped it and you got close.
Man, wow, you shooting them out of trees?
But a big boar, I have. I've shot a couple bear out of trees.
Wow, that seems really hard to find the shot placement and everything.
Yeah, one of them was standing, so it actually had its arms. Yeah. It was actually pretty easy. It's like it was like inviting me to shoot it.
Pick the spot, right? Poke it in the.
And I was on an adjacent hillside, so kind of like nearly at level. It was actually not very technical.
You, and that's why it ran up the tree.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. And it was a smaller bear. It was like 150 pounds, but basically, it wasn't a super technical shot either. And then I've had sows go up a tree quite often. But yeah, I guess a big boar, not commonly, but I have seen boars climb trees. But then the bears get down
that I've
faster.
Experienced, they just have made. I've never seen one climb a tree. They just make a beeline. You just see their butt going over the hill and down into the draw.
Yeah.
So, do you, when you're walking around bear hunting, do you hear them climb up the tree? Do you not sense them at all until they're already in the tree? Are you looking up as you're walking around?
Usually it's like, that's when you're seeing them for the first time, is like, what's that noise? Man, that's a super loud racket. My dad shot a bear out of a tree. I was with him in the high country and we're hiking down a ridge, and no, we did see it first. I saw something that could have been a deer. It was like, I saw a black butt. It was weird. I don't know what I saw exactly. Yeah. Next thing you know, it's up a tree. And my dad's like, do you have a bear tag? I'm like, no, I didn't buy one this year. I was in college, poor.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was over 10 years ago.
1650.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's nothing to buy one. But I mean, again, I had like a couple days. I was a distance runner in college, so I came home for a weekend. I wasn't supposed to be
More
hunting.
about the time. Yeah.
And then I was just out for a weekend, ended up getting a buck, and my dad got a bear.
Wow.
On that same day.
That's a cool hunt. Wow.
We have a little film of it. It was called Like a Buck and a Bear.
Okay.
Dad,
On your YouTube?
No.
Oh. Secret film?
We've been filming ever since day one. Always just with really bad cameras, so it's not worth sharing. Got
it. More for the memory bank.
It's the family. Yeah. It's the family video. We didn't we filmed Christmas and stuff, but we were filming the hunts. That was the family video. It wasn't like you're filming the soccer game. You were filming what you did on the weekend hunting.
Well, and your legacy goes back to your grandfather.
That's right. Starting
back in the late 40s, correct?
And even before that, yeah, that's kind of what I base my film established date on. Is grandpa. My established date on it only means something to me. It's that my grandpa Endicott started photography and filming before really the technology. Like, it was the earliest stuff, and he took amazing photos. And he also had film on reels, which unfortunately we lost. Yeah, I'm really bummed about that. But it was kind of in the basement over here at the place, and then lost track of it. That's a bummer, but I really wanted to recover that film and use it and see what it was. But all I have right now is slides. So back in high school is when we inherited all the slides. And so I went through and looked at them all. But yeah, Grandpa took some pretty awesome photos and some really cool places in Oregon, and he covered it all. And he would go in with a pack string of horses and mule. And so, I mean, he got after it.
And kind of camp out and
every major range in Oregon.
What was it in him that inspired him to begin filming and photography, taking pictures? What do you think?
Photography, yeah. Wow, that's a great question, and I don't know. Yeah. My dad might be able to explain.
Like, if you could speculate, like, is there something about filming for you that, like, what drives you personally, if not your grandpa? What drives you to want to film and capture those moments?
Yeah. Again, it's because I'm so passionate about sharing it, and I've always wanted my, siblings, my parents, now my kids, to be able to see what we do. It's just as much, again, as filming the at the soccer game with your phone or whatever. That was hunting. So it was very much the same thing. And so for me, it has always been there. It's something that we did from day one, and we plugged it into the TV, and Dad was excited to share about his hunt. So that's one part of it. I mean, that's a really big question. I could probably talk a lot more about it.
Sure. Well, and on that, since it kind of spawns from a more personal, family-related influence, how has it felt to kind of see more recognition in your films? And, you're getting more popular on social media and YouTube, and you're part of the Full Draw film tour.
Yeah.
How has that felt? Because it's kind of a different intention at that point, right?
Yeah. How's it felt? Well, like anything in life, you do have that sense of you feel appreciated, or your work feels valued. If you look at it at a point of view of it's work, then it feels good that people would recognize it and say, hey, good job.
Yeah. Well, it's something you're creating.
It's something you're creating, right? And so for me, it was always that you could take something raw and that had really no meaning. I mean, otherwise, all it is just some digital created imagery that lives on a piece of plastic. It is very, very raw. It's like a tree that could eventually be milled down, processed into lumber, and used to build a home. So you can do something with that raw material, or you can let it sit. So for me, it's always been how do I create something meaningful and special that might make a difference in somebody's life with this raw material? And then to me, it's that creativity of wow, I have this huge opportunity to do something for someone. It doesn't matter if I'm promoting hunting, which that's what I'm about, but also to encourage. I want to encourage people to have a positive life change from the outdoors. My whole life mission really is to encourage and promote positive life change in people. So that's also with my work. I chose a water utility. I'm a civil engineer. So I design water systems. You turn on your tap. That's because some engineer or some people have operated the system in order to ensure that you have that availability of water. So that's a purpose there. So same with my film and editing is that I'll do every attempt to put some little life-changing nugget in there so somebody might feel a difference. And every once in a while people come up to me and say, hey, I really value what you did with that film beyond just killing something.
Yeah.
It's not just killing something. A lot of my films, I don't even get the shot on film. Well, a few of them I have by absolute luck. But really, it's that I want to make a film people feel they got something out of it, either encouragement, or they learned a little bit more about hunting, or they felt encouraged to go hunting harder, more, to whatever standard they may dream up for themselves.
And I totally see that in your films too, because, man, those videos of people just driving from gate to gate, looking in clear cuts to snipe a deer at 300 yards, I mean, it just doesn't have the same, I guess vibe would be the word, you know, like I really see your love and respect for the animal, the environment, for the craft, the skill of, you know, stalking a deer or still hunting a deer versus, you know, road hunting a deer.
Yes.
You know, so you being able to reflect that in your films to the general public not only shows your heart and your love for it, encourages other hunters in that, but it's a good face for the world to see hunting as that pursuit of an animal over just whack 'em and stack 'em, which I'm not a fan of that mentality.
No, that is definitely a message that's out there. And while another thing I'm all about is like, I don't want to critique how others do it, but I do hope that with my own voice, I can promote, I think, another way to look at it. You know, the approach that I feel is more ethically and morally valued when you're out there doing it yourself. And this is the other piece is that, I mean, a lot of things are coming to mind right now. So it's hard to articulate all into just one coherent sentence or two or three. Sure. But so first I want to say my first film that I put on YouTube, anything that somebody could watch, I was purely in the editing mindset that I wanted my mom to see it. I wanted my future kids to see it. Yeah. So that was film number one.
And
so it's not super good.
Stored it on YouTube.
Yep, stored it on YouTube. It was a document management system for me. And I try to do things the best I can. So at that time, with the limited cameras, with the limited editing, it was the best I could do at that time. And then I was a really serious competitive athlete. So every time you laced up or every time you stepped on the track or the court, I was going to be a little better. I was competitive. So that's with filming too, is like, while I could stay the same, I feel this desire to always improve, sharpen your skills. Everything in creation is going somewhere. So my view is that I am also going somewhere. Every day is another opportunity to live your life to the full. So that's how I edit too. So every film I'm trying to do a little better. So that's a little backstory on why are you making more films? Why are they a little bit better? Why are you not just doing the same thing?
There's intentionality behind it. It's not just something that's happening.
Yeah. Try to have purpose and meaning in it because it's not work for me. This is all purely for fun. Yeah. Like it's my joy to do it.
And that's a huge thing. It's just the culture nowadays. We have awareness of people in the outdoor space. People who make great videos or who have great things to say, we're aware of them, you know? And so like we think of some of these people and you find out, oh my goodness, he has a full-time job? You know, I thought he was making his money off of hunting, you know, and you know, I've kind of known that you had the full-time job.
Yeah. But
for you to be able to have that balance of family and work and making videos, that's time consuming, editing a video, let alone filming it, which it's kind of dual purpose because you're hunting and filming.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how hard that must be for you to be able to divide your time up between all these things.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's for everyone. I was the way I was raised. I was raised to put in a lot of work. So for me, it's all about that effort. And I just can't divide it out of me. Like there's no way I could give any less.
Yeah. I'm curious with your passion and love for the outdoors and even filming, everything that we've talked about here, behind the success of the hunt and the payoff of like these epic films and these great memories. We've already touched on it quite a bit, but maybe more succinctly, what is the true motivation behind your life in the outdoors?
Yeah. And again, we've touched on it. And I feel like, again, life is so short. To think that any day is just mundane and it's just cyclical, like it just repeats, there's no meaning, would be selling your life extremely short. Some people tap into like their true, you know, humanity and live life to the full. They don't always know how to communicate it. There's people that we see in the spotlight they got in the spotlight for some crazy reason and people respect it and identify with it because they're living life to the best they can. There was a couple books I read around 2011 that really was helping shape that message, that human message, and what we're here to do and what we were created to do. And those books have really helped me align how I think about my time in the outdoors. Who we are is so much more important than just the things we do. And so when we go out in the woods, this is a time for solitude and I believe connecting with our Creator. It's that we're breathing hard, we're tapping into that survival instinct. We're made to survive and to thrive as humans. So like when we're out and we're really testing our limits and we're breathing hard and then we get lucky and are successful, we put in that effort, an opportunity, we seize it, it is overwhelming. And that whole experience, the whole process, bringing it home and then living off of that animal. I mean, that ties it all together is that I believe we were created. I believe that God gave us the ability to do this. And when we get to experience it, we feel that true meaning and joy of life. And so without that outlet for me, and when my wife is 100% on board with this, she knows, she's like, you need this time. And it helps you kind of more or less center with your life. And I feel like that's where I connect with God and I could breathe deep and really think about things in life. And then I come home and I'm ready to be a good dad to a little bit better degree. And I feel like I grow out there. It's like you don't always sharpen by talking with other people, which is great, but you can sharpen by being out and challenging yourself. It comes down to your character.
Yeah.
Like if you give up, if you just say, no, I'm throwing in the towel, you would die.
Yeah.
You would just die out there. So it's like without really testing your limits and what you're made of and just being comfortable in your skin and just knowing that you're going to be okay. You're trusting God that, he put you here for a reason. If you weren't meant to be, then you weren't meant to be. Like you might not make it that day or something, but no, you trust that God put you here for a reason. You're going to give it your best. You're going to do the best you can. You come home and you share that more or less like enlightenment or that feeling and of encouragement. And I share it with my wife, with my kids, and that hopefully, rubs off as being the parent. And my kids, they see it. They want to go. Like my son's obsessed about it. My daughter yesterday said, "Can we go fishing tonight?"
Nice.
I didn't say anything about fishing for weeks.
Yeah.
She just comes up, "Can we go fishing?" So we did.
But if there's something that you said that I just really hope anyone listening really latches on to is the whole point of purpose, that you were made with intentionality and there's a reason for you to be on this earth. And for people like you and me and Eric, we discover so much of that purpose by being in the woods. Have you ever heard of the book called Sacred Pathways by Gary Thomas?
Haven't.
He's the same author that did the whole love languages concept.
Oh, yeah.
So it's similar to that because it's the sense of like what spiritual pathways do each of us connect with God. And one of them is he dubbed it the naturalist, which I strongly identify. It sounds like you do too. It's like all the noise and conversations and all this stuff that we're trying to do and accomplish that just makes us busy and less able to hear from God and connect with him.
Yeah.
And going to church on Sunday morning and worshiping, like that's one way to connect with God. And we need that time of community with the believers.
Yeah.
But being in nature, surrounded by something that is
so much bigger than yourself.
Yeah. And so much closer to how God created the world.
Yeah.
As much as like it being on the Coast Range, everything's been logged and clear cut and it's factory forest, but there's still something natural it's been allowed to go wild. And I'm out there, it's just me and the animals and the Lord.
Right.
And being able to hear from him and seek that purpose. Like, why am I here, God? Why did you create me? I hope that anyone listening to this can latch onto that message.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good one. It's powerful too. I mean, to know that you have a purpose. You're created intentionally. Everyone was. So, and then it's just being able to really identify with what you were made to do. And some of us, again, it's through people. Like, it's through that community.
Yeah, yeah.
And then some, we really appreciate the outdoors and being in it.
Yep. And I have a feeling that anyone listening to this who's made it to this part of the show is one of those people who there's something deeply spiritual and important to us being out there in the mountains.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, hunting and fishing kind of got a bad rap within families because it was like, oh, that's a time suck, right? But it sounds like in your case, your wife's fully supportive.
Yeah.
You guys probably hunt together.
We have, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so it's great. I mean, she's on mission with you.
That's right. Yeah, my wife's like my number one supporter to let me do this stuff. And with that, I also feel like I owe her a great deal of respect in order to make the most of it. So that sacrifice she makes, then I then would also make the same for her, and that I'm doing everything I can. I'm not out like, when you said that, I mean, yeah, it's like everyone has their own vice or something. And so for males over time, like hitting the bar or something after work, or it's getting out with your buddies and drinking beer and driving around the woods and shooting stuff up with your, like there's all these things I think gave the outdoorsmen maybe a bad rap just to get away from the wife and kids. But rather I take the wife and kids right into it full force. And then, then at times when I was like, maybe you just go on this one because I mean, it's a lot of work, and the way we do it is to really get out there. So, but she does
and that's
appreciate
a really important point too. That's how we need to see it. And it's totally valid in your case, and I relate to that too. Is me going out solo is a recentering on God that will hopefully benefit me and help me be a better man, a better husband, a better father. But then if you are only leaving your family behind and you're constantly hunting, like what you're saying, bringing them along causes it to be a unifying experience for your family and getting them into it. And I'm married to a non-hunter, but we still have done stuff together. She'll help me go put up trail cameras, or even go hunting with me a couple times a year. And I have to be very careful that I don't neglect my family for hunting.
Right.
And as soon as she starts complaining, like, "Oh, you're being gone again," that's when I realize I'm doing something wrong. That's what I think what Eric was hitting on too, is when your wives and children begin to feel neglected because you're spending all your time hunting instead of being a father and a husband.
Right.
The same thing happens with workaholics. The same thing happens with, like you're saying, addicts or people who go to bars all the time.
Yeah.
Is, bring your family into it. And for anyone out there who their wife is complaining about them being gone all the time, bring them into it if they're willing. Like I said, I married a non-hunter. I married a person who had never been camping before we started dating,
learning curve there.
Yeah.
And I literally invite her on every hunt, even if I have to not be successful and bend all of the rules on how hard I hunt, because I want them to be involved or invited. And it's usually my wife's like, nah, I'm going to stay home because it's easier with the kids. But I'm always giving that option. It's always an open door to go. And I'm never saying this is a me thing, because it's not. For me, it's always been about sharing that experience. However, I'm way more successful and I can get it done in half the time if I go by myself. So, and again, I want to be out there regardless.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. Great ending to our episode. Some encouragement out there for the fathers and husbands who, might look to your videos and just wonder how you do it. And, it sounds like making them a part of the process and helping them to find that same love that you have. So they want you to be out there. And they want to be out there as well. That's great. Eric, do you have any closing thoughts?
Man, we're just really, really appreciative, not only of your time, but your willingness just to drop some knowledge on us,
And some wisdom.
Wisdom, for sure. And it seems like you kind of model, once a teacher, always a student. I just noticed that within 5 minutes of meeting you. That's just important. And I see people are actually learning. And they're not just learning about hunting and fishing. They're learning about family. They're learning about ethical kills. They're learning about spending time outside. I really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
If anyone is listening to this, keep an eye out for the Full Draw Film Tour. So the one here in Springfield is this Saturday, which the podcast will not be released before that. But it sounds like you guys are getting pretty close to sold out.
I'm not really sure on the numbers, but
okay.
Yeah, we'll have a good turnout.
Yeah.
Here at the farm on Saturday.
For any future, look at Full Draw Film Tour. Are there any other places you want to point people?
Really, you just go to the website.
Sweet. And endicottfilms.com. Really great website that is not cluttered in any way, which is awesome.
It's a landing page.
You got your YouTube and your Instagram there, Nathan For You. So make sure to check out Nathan's stuff that's going on and support his vision for all this.
Thank you.
Nathan, thank you for being on.
Thanks,
Looking
guys.
forward to talking to you again.
Yep.